Wynn Bruce told the truth on April 22nd, 2022, when he self-immolated in front of the Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. Like David Buckle before him and hundreds of other activists who have lit themselves on fire in protest of the extreme injustices of this world over the centuries. Wynn made the ultimate sacrifice in an attempt to shake humanity from its stupor and hasten action to save our beloved planet. Wynn Bruce didn't just tell the truth. He reenacted it at the human level and on a microcosmic scale. What is happening all around us today and every day is what happened to Wynn, except it's happening to us in slow motion. How lucky we are that there's still time to douse the flames.
Untimely, unimaginable, yet dignified death in the hope that it would motivate us to fight harder to save our burning planet. Perhaps in the hope that it would spur those who remain sidelined to lend their voices and bodies to fight for survival and the fate of Mother Earth. I can only assume that Wynn felt the desperation of one with the clarity of vision to see the climate emergency for what it is, a ticking apocalypse time bomb, and each second wasted is more lives lost. Wynn struggled with the frustration of one who has spent years communicating the urgency of the moment, only to watch as capitalist society carries on like never before, hungrier than ever for fossil fuels, belching smog and carbon. These are feelings that we can all relate to. And because we can relate, we gather to mourn and honor Wynn Bruce, a middle-aged man, only 50 years young, who passed before his time in a most dramatic manner. We gather together in refusal, in protest of his relegation to the dustbin of obscurity as his name sinks like a stone through the 24-hour news cycle. Wynn Bruce will not be forgotten.
Wynn Bruce was a son, a friend, a photographer, a documentarian, a devout Buddhist, and an avowed climate activist. Wynn loved dancing and loved cats and animals generally, as his friends and loved ones in Boulder, Colorado have attested in newspapers and magazines since his passing. He was known as an especially passionate activist and a compassionate person who went out of his way to help others. One beautiful example is the friendship he struck up with the sculptor Brian Grossman, a Boulder resident with multiple sclerosis. The two became friends after Wynn helped Grossman get his mobility tricycle down from his car while on shift at the vitamin college Wynn worked at. They forged a steady friendship. Wynn would go on to direct a short documentary about Grossman's experiences sculpting with disability. In short, Wynn Bruce was one of us, an ordinary person striving to be as compassionate and courageous as they possibly can, pushing and bucking against the oppressive conditions created by the broken political system, the sickly society, and dying world we inhabit. Therefore, it is our responsibility to raise him up and to ensure that Wynn's great sacrifice and David Buchal's before him do not go unnoticed. We will not allow their deaths to be spun as suicide. We will not allow them to be portrayed as profoundly sick people. There is logic, pathos, and sincerity in their sacrificial decisions. Their actions struck an inky black underline beneath the words "climate action now." The stark and horrifying truth is that Wynn Bruce was not the first to take their own life in such a manner, not the first to take their own life to protest the climate emergency. And Wynn most likely will not be the last, unless we begin to drastically change our capitalist society, our all-consuming economy, our neoliberal politics, and our unnatural lifeways. We will see many more activists die in the coming years, whether at the hands of the carceral state or their own. This is why we must not forget that Wynn Bruce's death could have been avoided, and why we must lay his coffin before the head of state and the powers that be, the elite power brokers and the decision makers who continue to pave the road towards climate apocalypse with ever more emissions, and the bodies of those sensitive, beautiful souls like Wynn Allen Bruce. May he rest in peace.
Thich Nhat Hanh's quote concerning the Vietnamese monks who burned themselves to death in protest during the Vietnam War seems particularly relevant today. He said, "To burn oneself by fire is to prove that what one is saying is of the utmost importance. There's nothing more painful than burning oneself. To say something while experiencing this kind of pain is to say it with utmost courage, frankness, determination, and sincerity." Now, as a climate activist, I often wonder, where is everybody? How do so many people maintain their indifference to the suffering climate emergency is bringing to, while others like Wynn Bruce act out such selfless ways? I don't think anyone wants to be a climate activist, but somehow here we are. Perhaps the observation that ownership of property permits its destruction has led us to understand that the only thing we can truly own are our actions. Or as Thich Nhat Hanh so simply stated, "My actions are my only true belongings." 50 years of words have failed to make any difference, and so we act. And by our actions, we're trying to direct attention to this climate crisis. Nonviolence is the only limitation we place on what are acceptable tactics. And so we march, and we hand out leaflets, and we talk, and we listen, and we hold up signs, and we sing, and we try to entertain, and we educate, and we worry, and we console, and we warn, and we annoy, and we cajole, and we disrupt. And then we argue amongst ourselves about which actions went too far and which actions went ineffectually not far enough. But through it all, the progress we hope for is that some part of our actions inspire more people to act. It's been reported that none of Wynn Bruce's friends knew what he was planning, and also that had they known, they would have done everything they could to discourage him. So it's an easy argument to suggest that Wynn Bruce's action went too far, but I think it's wrong to say that his selfless act was not inspirational. No one knows exactly what Wynn's hopes or expectations were, but I have hope that he will be an inspiration for others to act, and that more people may begin to understand the gravity of the crisis that we're all facing. As an individual, it's easy to feel like nothing you do will ever make a difference. Perhaps Wynn Bruce was simply unwilling or unable to accept that feeling. It remains to be seen whether or not Wynn Bruce has made a difference. But as we look forward to the task set out for climate activists, it's my hope that when we feel we just can't, that our thoughts of Wynn Bruce will inspire us to look to each other for help, to build community, and be part of that difference that simply has to be made. There's nothing we can't accomplish if enough of us work together. And so, with respect and gratitude to Wynn Bruce and in solidarity with all climate activists, I'll see you in the streets.